Stop scrolling for a second and listen carefully, because what I'm about to say will change how you think about yourself, your habits, and your future. Most people think growth is dramatic, overnight success, sudden wealth, instant confidence. That's a lie. The reality is far more powerful, far more shocking, and far more within your control than you've ever realized. What separates people who live ordinary lives from people who become unstoppable is not talent. It's not luck. It's not even motivation. It's the small, invisible choices you make every single day that nobody notices. The problem is, most people quit before anything happens. They expect results immediately, and when life doesn't deliver, they settle, they complain, they get distracted. But the truth is, real transformation is quiet. It happens under the surface. It happens in the moments you think nobody is watching. It happens while you're tired, frustrated, doubting yourself, and yet you keep showing up. And here's the part almost no one tells you: the first 30, 60, even 90 days of effort may feel invisible. You may not feel different, you may not look different, and no one may notice. That's when most people fail. But if you stay disciplined, if you improve just 1% every day, if you honor your promises to yourself even when it's uncomfortable, your life will change in ways so dramatic that it feels like magic. But it's not magic. It's a system, a process. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly how to use that system to rebuild your life, reshape your identity, and finally become the person you've been pretending to be in your mind. If you're serious, watch every second, because what comes next will shock you, challenge you, and push you to act in ways you've never dared before. Let me slow this down for a moment, because this is where most people misunderstand change. When you hear small, daily actions, your mind automatically dismisses them. You think they're too weak, too insignificant, too slow to matter. You think real change has to feel intense, dramatic, exhausting. That belief alone is what keeps people stuck year after year, repeating the same promises with different dates on the calendar. The truth is, your life is not the result of a few major decisions. It's the result of thousands of tiny choices stacked on top of each other. What you do when you wake up, what you reach for when you're tired, what you tell yourself when something doesn't go your way. These moments don't feel important, which is exactly why they control your future. A 1% improvement doesn't demand heroics. It doesn't ask you to become someone else overnight. It asks you to become slightly better than yesterday in a way that is sustainable. And sustainability is the most underestimated force in personal growth. Anyone can push hard for a week. Very few people can show up with quiet discipline for months. Here's the uncomfortable reality. Most people don't fail because they aim too low. They fail because they aim too high and burn out. They set goals that require a complete personality change instead of behaviors that require small adjustments. When the effort becomes unbearable, they don't lower the goal, they abandon the process entirely. That cycle repeats until disappointment becomes identity. Small actions work because they bypass resistance. Your brain doesn't fight a 5-minute walk the way it fights an hour at the gym. It doesn't panic at reading one page the way it panics at finishing an entire book. Psychologically, this matters. When resistance is low, consistency becomes possible. And consistency is where change actually happens. What you repeat, you reinforce. What you reinforce, you become. Every small action casts a vote for the person you are becoming. One vote doesn't decide an election, but enough votes, over time, make the outcome inevitable. When you improve 1% a day, you are not chasing outcomes. You are shaping identity, and identity is what determines how you act when no one is watching. Think about this carefully. People don't fail because they lack information. They fail because their habits are stronger than their intentions. You can know exactly what you should do and still not do it. That's not a knowledge problem. That's a behavioral problem, and behavior is changed through repetition, not inspiration. 1% improvement rewires how you see effort. Instead of asking, "Is this enough to change my life?" you ask, "Is this enough to keep my word today?" That shift is subtle, but it's everything. When your standard becomes keeping promises to yourself, your self-respect begins to grow. And when self-respect grows, discipline stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like alignment. This is where philosophy meets psychology. The ancient idea of character was built on repeated action, not emotional states. You are not what you intend, you are what you practice. Each small improvement is practice in becoming someone who follows through, someone who doesn't need to feel motivated to act, someone who understands that progress is earned, not announced. There's another reason small daily actions are powerful, and it's one people rarely talk about. They create momentum, not the loud kind that looks impressive online, but the internal kind that changes how you move through the world. When you do a little every day, you stop negotiating with yourself. You stop asking, should I? And start saying, this is just what I do. That's when discipline becomes automatic. Momentum doesn't start with confidence. Confidence is a byproduct. Momentum starts with movement. One step creates the next. One completed action lowers the psychological barrier to the next one. Over time, effort feels lighter, not because the task is easier, but because you are stronger. Most people underestimate how much their environment responds to consistency. When you show up a little better every day, opportunities start appearing that didn't exist before. People respond differently. Conversations change. Your tolerance for chaos decreases. Your standards rise quietly. This isn't magic, it's cause and effect. What's dangerous is that 1% decline works the same way. Skipping once becomes skipping often. Excuses become habits. Neglect compounds just as powerfully as improvement. The direction you move in, even slightly, matters more than how fast you move. Over time, small negative choices create a life that feels heavy and out of control. Small positive choices create a life that feels intentional. This is why waiting for motivation is such a mistake. Motivation is emotional. 1% improvement is structural. It doesn't rely on how you feel, it relies on what you do. When you anchor your progress to emotion, it disappears the moment life becomes uncomfortable. When you anchor it to behavior, it survives stress, doubt, and fatigue. And make no mistake, it will feel boring at times. That's not a flaw in the process. That's the price of mastery. Boredom is often the signal that you are doing something right long enough for it to work. The people who succeed are not the ones who avoid boredom. They are the ones who don't let boredom talk them out of consistency. There will be days when your 1% feels meaningless. Days when nothing seems to change. Those days matter more than the ones where progress feels exciting. Because that's when you're training something deeper than skill. You're training reliability. You're proving to yourself that you can be trusted. That inner trust becomes the foundation for every other improvement in your life. Eventually, something shifts, not all at once, quietly. You notice you react differently. You recover faster. You hesitate less. You stop needing external validation to stay on track. That's the compound effect revealing itself. From the outside, it looks sudden. From the inside, it feels earned. So don't ask whether 1% is impressive. Ask whether it is repeatable. Ask whether it is honest. Ask whether it moves you slightly closer to the person you respect, because over time, those small answers build a life that no longer depends on willpower alone. And here's the closing truth to sit with. You don't change your life by doing something extraordinary once. You change your life by doing something ordinary, consistently, until it becomes who you are. Now let's talk about the thing everyone keeps waiting for and almost no one truly understands. Motivation. People treat motivation like a prerequisite, as if it's something that must arrive before action is allowed. They say, once I feel motivated, I'll start. But that way of thinking quietly hands control of your life over to your moods. And moods are unstable. They change with sleep, stress, praise, criticism, and convenience. If your progress depends on how you feel, your progress will always be fragile. Discipline works differently. Discipline does not ask for emotional permission. It doesn't care if you're inspired or tired, confident or doubtful. Discipline is simply the decision to act according to your values instead of your feelings. That's why discipline builds identity while motivation only creates moments. Most people don't lack ambition, they lack self-trust. They've broken too many promises to themselves, so when they say, "I'll start tomorrow," their mind doesn't believe them. Over time, this erodes confidence. Not the loud kind of confidence you see online, but the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you will follow through even when no one is watching. Every small promise you keep repairs that trust, and every promise you break damages it. This is not abstract psychology, it's lived experience. Your brain keeps score. When you repeatedly say you'll do something and don't, your mind learns that your words have no authority. Eventually, even your best intentions sound empty to you. Discipline reverses that damage one action at a time. When you do what you said you would do, especially when it's inconvenient, you send a powerful signal inward. You teach yourself that your decisions matter. That signal changes how you speak to yourself, how you handle pressure, and how seriously you take your own goals. This is why discipline is not about force or harshness. It's about alignment. When your actions match your values, internal conflict decreases. You stop arguing with yourself, you stop negotiating, life becomes simpler, not easier, but clearer.